Today is October 15th. That's a month of school we've gone through. Where we finished Chapter 2. We're done of Chapter 2. We're working on our practice test here, which is 2-1, 2-2, 2-3, all of the formative quizzes. We start your 2-1 formative quiz with 4 true and falses. Now, please pay attention to how I solve this, because on your test, I have an expectation how true and false will be solved. If you don't show work, you don't get a point. Even if your answer is correct, you might not get any points for it. So it says negative 0.2 is greater than negative 0.22. What I would do if I was solving this is I would probably put this first, and then I would probably put a number line with 0. I'd put probably negative 0.20 and negative 0.22 on a number line, and then I would say this greater because closer to 0. So therefore, is it greater? Yes, it is. It's true. All right, so I supported my work with maybe a number line. That's why I did it, but you don't have to. But a sentence that says 0.2 is or negative 0.2 is closer to 0. Therefore, negatives, the closer to 0 they are, the larger they are. In question 2, a fraction between these two, a half and 3/5 is 11/20. There's various ways you could do it. I'm sure that Sophie probably did this. She probably said this is 10/20, and she probably said this is 12/20, and therefore 11/20 is, and you'd say, true. It's right in between them, right? You might also have changed them both to decimals. 1/2 equals 0.5, 3/5 equals 0.6, and 11/20 is 0.65, or 0.55, excuse me. So you could either do it this way or the other way, but both answers will say that it's true, because you can add insignificant zeros there and say that, yes, that is between the two. Both are fine and acceptable ways to prove that those fractions are between them. Probably the first way, making equivalent fractions with common denominators, is the best method to use. Question 3 says negative 5/3 is less than negative 3/5. Again, probably a number line would be appropriate. Since this, as a mixed fraction, is negative 2 1/3, I could put 0 here, I could put negative 1 here, and put negative 2 here. Negative 3/5 would be here. Negative 1 1/3, or 2/3, excuse me. Oh, that's in the wrong spot. Right there is right here. Negative 1 2/3. So therefore, the answer is true. True, it is less, because the farther away from 0 a number is, the smaller it is. Something like that would be fine. And then finally, question 4, 0 is a rational number. In order to remember what rational numbers are, we have to remember the definition, where b cannot be equal to 0. That's our definition for what rational numbers are. They can be any number that you get when you substitute a and b for any numbers, as long as b is not 0. So therefore, because the only stipulation is b can't be 0, that means that a can be 0. And if I make a 0 and b any rational number, oh, sorry, I got that backwards. Sorry, I'll go back to that again. So I'll go 0 divided by 2. If I have $0 divided between 2 people, how much would each person get? 0. If I had $0 divided between 8 people, how much does everybody get? 0. And I could keep doing this infinitely, no matter what I choose for my a and b. As long as I choose a as 0 and b as any integer, which is the rules for rational numbers, 0 can be the result, meaning that yes, 0 is a rational number. Question 5 asks us to find a decimal between 2 given fractions. The easiest way is to convert both of these to decimals right away. So to do so, I know that 1 2/3 is 1.6 repeating, because I know my thirds are 1/3 is 3 repeating, 2/3 is 6. I'm going to add some like this. Just like that would be fine. Choose a decimal between there. I'm going to say the best one between there. I'm just going to keep it simple. Negative 1.61. I made it 1. But you could use anything. You could have a negative 1.65, negative 1.62. There are infinite possibilities. I just went one significant place higher than the negative 1.6, and I use that one. But you can use whatever you want. For the next one, 41/100ths. That's an easy one to convert because I read it as 41/100ths. And 2/5, which is 0.4. Since the first number has two significant decimal places and the second one only has one, I'm going to add a 0 here. And I'm like, can I tell a decimal between there yet? Not really. So what should I probably do? Add another 0 to both of them. Insignificant zeros does not change the value. I now have both of them written with 3 decimal places, and now I can choose one that's between. And since the goal is to try and choose the one Mr. McDonald chooses, I'm pretty sure most of you probably chose that one. That's the one right between it. But you might not have. You might have chose something different. Okay? Question 6 says the opposite. It gives us decimals, asks us to choose a fraction between them. Okay, so in order to find it, the easiest way to do it would be to choose, just change them both to either fractions. This is not the easier one. You could choose them to fractions, which is this. Then add a 0 to both to make them equivalent fractions, because essentially 14/100ths is equal to 140,000ths because we multiply both by 10. That's one way to do it. And then this would also be 150,000. So a fraction between those two would be 145,000ths. But if you know me at all, you know that I like to reduce it down to lowest terms, which would be 29/500. No, 29/200, which would be your lowest term fraction. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it would be simply to add a 0, 0.140 and 0.150. Think of a decimal between there. What would your decimal be? 0.145. And once I have a decimal between those two decimals, I just have to read this one. That's 145,000ths, which takes me right back to my part here. I can now write it very simply as a decimal or as a fraction, and then I can reduce it by dividing both by a common multiple of 5. The second question says negative 1.09 and 1.0. So the easiest thing again is just to choose, add a 0 to the end of it. I still don't know one, so I'm going to add one here and here. So 0.090 and 0.100. I think of this as being 90, and this as being 100. So therefore, the one that would be between there would be that one. And therefore, as a fraction, it's negative 1. Read your decimal as the word and. Negative 1 and 95,000ths would be as a fraction. Or, in lowest terms, since both are divisible by 5, negative 1 and 19/200ths, if you reduced it down. That's interesting. Did you keep it? Wow. I think it would be harder. I think it would be harder to write this. That's harder, isn't it? I would always write this one as this. I would never write it as this to start. You wrote it as this? Huh? What you talking about, Willis? No, because how do you read this? How do you read that? Read it to me, Riley. Okay, read it to me. Sophie? Thousandths. Which one of those here says negative 1 and 95,000? No, it's not. It's, well, whatever. Whatever. With question 7, you definitely have a question like this on your test, and what you have to do, the easiest way that we've already talked about, is to change them all to decimals. This one won't change. This one will become negative 1.2 as well, or negative 1.2. This one will be negative 1.3 repeating, and negative 1.3. I think I made a mistake. This was supposed to have a line above it. So we'll pretend there was a line above it. I know. So we'll just pretend. You're just correcting your own. It's not worth marks. So we'll pretend it has a line above it. Then we're going to say, putting them in rational in order, keeping in mind this is 0, and this is going to be negative 2, and this is going to be negative 1. Negative 1.2 would be your closest to 0, correct? Therefore, your largest number is going to be, we have to go ascending order, meaning from smallest to largest. So we're just put them in order like this. This goes here, then it's going to be negative 1.2 repeating right here. Then we're going to go negative 1.3, which is negative 1.3, and then we're going to go right here, which is negative 4/3. So in ascending order means from smallest to largest, ascending from smallest to largest. Our smallest is this. Our next smallest is this. Our next smallest is this. And our largest number is this. Okay? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Our largest number is the closest to 0 when it's negative. And you make that mistake in the test, easy mistake to make. Make sure you go from the smallest, which is the farthest from 0, inwards towards 0. Is that the last question? One more? And finally, what is a rational number? Well, we already talked about it in your multiple choice. It's any number divided by any number as long as b does not equal 0. They can be things like terminating decimals. If you want to wow me, sure. They can be repeating decimals. They can be mixed fractions. Or they can be improper fractions. They can be whole numbers. And the last one we talked about was integers. Okay? So if you know those, you might as well write them. It's only going to take you 15 seconds to write them.